The bus rolled through the gates of Marine Corps Base Quantico at 4:30 hours, and Sarah Martinez pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the darkness slowly give way to dawn. Her stomach churned, not from fear, but from anticipation. She'd dreamed of this moment since she was 16, since the day she'd watched her brother Miguel's flag-draped coffin lowered into the ground. Now, at 23, she was finally here. The bus doors hissed open. "Get off MY bus, move, move, move." Sarah grabbed her duffel bag and joined the stream of recruits pouring onto the asphalt. The Virginia air hit her face, humid and thick even in the pre-dawn hours. Around her, bodies moved in controlled chaos, mostly men, she noted, towering figures with broad shoulders and thick necks. At 53 and 125 pounds, Sarah knew she stood out, but she'd been standing out her whole life. "Line UP, I want 3 ranks right now." Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Morrison stood like a monument of muscle and fury, his smoky bare hat casting shadows across his face. Sarah found her spot in formation, standing at attention between 2 recruits who could have been linebackers. She fixed her eyes forward, jaw set, shoulders back. Morrison began his walk down the line, inspecting each recruit with the intensity of a predator selecting prey. When he reached Sarah, he stopped. The silence stretched for 5 excruciating seconds. "What do we have here?" His voice carried across the entire formation. "You lost, recruit. The Girl Scouts meet down the road." Laughter rippled through the ranks. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't move, didn't blink. "I asked you a question." "No, sir." Sarah's voice cut through the morning air, clear and unwavering. Morrison leaned closer, close enough that she could see the veins in his neck. "You think you can make it in my corps? You think that little body can handle what I'm about to put you through?" "Yes, sir." He straightened up, shaking his head with a smile that held no warmth. "We'll see about that. We'll see." He moved on, but Sarah felt the weight of judgment settling on her shoulders like a lead vest. The first physical training session began at 600. The platoon, officially designated as 2044, assembled on the PT field as the sun crept above the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Sarah positioned herself in the middle of the formation, trying to be invisible but knowing that was impossible. 3 miles, let's go. The run started fast. Sarah had always been a good runner. Her small frame meant less weight to carry, and her years of training had built her cardiovascular endurance to impressive levels. She settled into a rhythm, her breathing controlled, her stride efficient. Within the first mile, she'd passed a dozen larger recruits who'd started too aggressively. As they rounded the 2-mile mark, Sarah found herself in the front third of the pack. A female recruit named Jessica pulled alongside her, breathing hard. "There, watching us," she gasped between breaths. Sarah noticed it too. The drill instructors weren't just monitoring the run, they were specifically tracking the women, clipboards in hand, exchanging glances and shaking their heads. It wasn't encouragement, it was documentation of expected failure. "Faster," Sarah told Jessica, "show them." They pushed harder, crossing the finish line in the top quarter of the platoon. Sarah's lungs burned, but satisfaction warmed her chest. She'd proven something. Or so she thought. "Not bad for a warm-up," Morrison's voice boomed. "Now let's see what you're really made of. Rope climb, everyone on the obstacle course." The obstacle course loomed ahead, a nightmare landscape of walls, trenches, and climbing apparatus designed to break bodies and spirits. The rope climb stood at the center, a thick, rough rope extending 30 feet into the air, worn smooth by thousands of climbs. Sarah's confidence wavered. Rope climbing had always been her weakness. Her grip strength, while improved through years of martial arts training, couldn't compete with the natural advantage of larger hands and heavier body weight that could generate more momentum. "Martinez, you're first. Show us what girl power looks like." The platoon formed a semicircle around the rope. Sarah approached it, her heart hammering. She could feel 200 eyes on her, could sense the anticipation of her failure. She jumped, grabbed the rope, and began to climb. Her technique was textbook. Wrap the rope around her foot, push with her legs, pull with her arms, repeat. But halfway up, her forearms began to scream. Her grip started slipping. She pushed harder, but her hands, slick with sweat, couldn't hold. She slid down 5 feet before catching herself. "Come on, Martinez," someone shouted, but it didn't sound supportive. She tried again, made it 5 feet higher this time, but her muscles were fried. Her hands opened against her will, and she fell the remaining distance, landing hard on the mat below. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs. Again. Sarah stood, chalk dust coating her trembling hands, and tried once more. This time, she barely made it 10 feet before sliding down, rope burn adding to her collection of pain. "Weak," someone coughed from the gathered crowd. Others snickered. Morrison walked over, his expression a mixture of disappointment and vindication. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Heart's not enough, recruit. You need strength. You need capability. Can't fight the enemy if you can't climb a rope." Sarah stood at attention, sweat dripping into her eyes, humiliation burning hotter than any physical exertion. But beneath the embarrassment, something else ignited, a coal of determination that would soon become an inferno. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. As the platoon moved to the next obstacle, Sarah caught the whispers. "She won't last 2 weeks. Why do they even let them try? Waste of time and resources." That night, alone in her rack, Sarah stared at the ceiling of the barracks. Her hands were wrapped in bandages, her muscles screamed, and her pride was wounded. But she'd been wounded before. She'd survived worse than rope burns and insults. She thought of Miguel, of the promise she'd made at his grave. Tomorrow she'd wake up at 500 and do it all again, and the day after that, and the day after that. They called her weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Week 2 began with bruises. Sarah counted them in the mirror of the head bathroom, as civilians called it. 7 distinct marks across her arms, 3 on her ribs, 1 spectacular purple bloom spreading across her left shoulder blade. She traced them with her fingers like a map of her journey, each one a testament to impacts absorbed, falls survived, and a body that refused to quit. "Looking rough, Martinez," Jessica said, emerging from one of the shower stalls. She had her own collection of bruises, though fewer. Everyone did. "Purple's my color," Sarah replied, managing a grin. But they both knew the truth. Sarah's bruises weren't just from normal training. They were evidence of something more deliberate, more targeted. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. During hand-to-hand combat drills, while other recruits were paired with partners of similar size and experience, Sarah consistently found herself matched against the biggest men in the platoon. Corporal Davis, 64 and 240 pounds of farm-raised muscle. Private First Class Johnson, a former college wrestler who outweighed her by almost 100 pounds. Recruit Thompson, who'd apparently been an amateur boxer before enlisting. "It's to test your limits," drill instructor Morrison had explained with that same cold smile. "Enemy won't care that you're small. Better you learn that here than in the field." On the surface, it sounded reasonable. But Sarah wasn't stupid. She'd trained in martial arts long enough to know that proper instruction involved progressive resistance, not throwing beginners to the wolves. The male recruits were being taught technique, given partners who matched their skill level so they could develop properly. Sarah was being used as a punching bag, a living demonstration that women didn't belong. Today's combatives training started like all the others. The platoon formed a circle on the mats, the air thick with the smell of sweat and disinfectant. Instructor Sergeant Chen demonstrated a basic takedown defense, hip movement, weight distribution, leverage over strength. Partner up. Size doesn't matter if your technique is solid. Sarah found herself facing Davis again. He towered over her like a building with arms. "No hard feelings, Martinez," he said, not unkindly. Davis wasn't malicious, just following orders. "I'll try to go easy." "Don't," Sarah replied, and she meant it. The whistle blew. Davis reached for her with those enormous hands, and Sarah's body moved on instinct, muscle memory from 8 years of training under Master Chen at the Victory Dojo in East LA. She recognized the reach, saw the opening, and stepped inside his guard. Her hip connected with his center of gravity, and using his own momentum, she threw him. All 240 pounds of Davis hit the mat with a thunderous impact that stopped every conversation in the room. Silence, then Morrison's voice cut through. "Luck again." They reset. Davis came more cautiously this time, respect dawning in his eyes. Sarah defended, deflected, and when he overcommitted to a grab, she swept his leg. He went down again. Again. 5 times they went. Sarah took him down 3 times, defended successfully once, and only got taken down herself on the last attempt when exhaustion made her sloppy. By the end, Davis was breathing hard and looking at her with newfound respect. But Morrison wasn't impressed. "Cute party tricks. Let's see how you do against someone who actually knows what they're doing. Johnson, get in here." And so it continued. Each time Sarah showed competence, the difficulty increased. Each time she succeeded, the bar was raised higher. It was a game she couldn't win, designed to ensure her failure, not develop her skills. During the afternoon session, they moved to striking drills. Sarah was paired with Thompson, the boxer. His first jab caught her in the ribs despite her guard, a sharp, professional shot that drove the air from her lungs and sent pain radiating through her torso. "Sorry," Thompson muttered, but his eyes said he wasn't. The whistle blew again. This time Sarah was ready. Thompson threw combinations, jab, cross, hook, but Sarah's years of Muay Thai training kicked in. She blocked, parried, moved. When he dropped his right hand slightly, she snapped a leg kick into his thigh that made him stumble. His eyes widened. "You actually know how to fight." "Shocking right," Sarah, breath circling. They continued for 3 rounds. Sarah absorbed punishment. There was no avoiding it given the size difference, but she also landed strikes. Clean strikes, technical strikes, the kind that made Sergeant Chen pause and watch more closely. After the drill, Chen pulled her aside. "Where'd you train?" "Victory Dojo, Los Angeles. Master Chen, no relation, I assume." A brief smile crossed the instructor's face. "Good school, I know it." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "You've got real skill, Martinez. Better than half the men here. Don't let them break you." It was the first acknowledgement she'd received from any instructor that she belonged here. Sarah felt something crack in her chest, not breaking but opening. Someone saw her. Someone knew. But that evening, during chow, she overheard the conversation that would change everything. The drill instructors sat at their own table in the mess hall, speaking in voices that carried just enough to be heard by nearby recruits. Morrison led the discussion, gesturing with his fork. "The women are slowing everything down. We have to modify obstacles, adjust standards." "Martinez isn't slow," Chen interrupted. "She's got better technique than." "Technique doesn't matter when you can't carry a wounded Marine off the battlefield," Morrison cut him off. "She couldn't even climb the rope. What happens when she needs to scale a wall in Fallujah? What happens when a 200-pound Marine is hit and needs extraction?" Sarah's appetite vanished. She stared at her tray, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "She's improving," Chen argued. "Every day she's..." "She's a liability," Morrison said flatly. "They all are. This whole women in combat experiment is going to get people killed. Mark my words." Jessica, sitting across from Sarah, reached under the table and squeezed her hand. "Don't listen to them." But Sarah was listening. She was listening to every word, feeling them land like physical blows. The bruises on her body would heal in days. These words would fuel her for years. That night, long after lights out, Sarah lay in her rack and stared into the darkness. Her body ached. Her pride was wounded. But something else was happening inside her, a crystallization of purpose, a hardening of resolve. They wanted to prove she was weak. Fine, she'd prove she was iron. She thought back to the early mornings at Victory Dojo, when Master Chen would make her hold stances until her legs trembled and tears streamed down her face. Pain is temporary, he'd say. Character is permanent. She thought of Miguel, who'd wanted to be strong but had sought strength in all the wrong places. He died at 19 with a gun in his hand, trying to prove himself to people who would never respect him. Sarah would be different. She would earn respect the right way, through skill, through perseverance, through undeniable capability. Tomorrow she'd wake at 500. She'd face whatever they threw at her. She'd take the hits, absorb the insults, and keep moving forward. They called her weak. They called her a liability. They had no idea what she was building in this crucible of doubt and pain. But soon, very soon, they would find out. Week 6. Sarah had survived longer than Morrison predicted, longer than the betting pools in the barracks had given her. She'd mastered the rope climb through sheer repetition and bloody determination, leaving skin on that rope every day until her hands developed calluses thick as leather. She'd kept pace on the runs, held her own in combatives, and earned grudging respect from some of her fellow recruits. But respect from the drill instructors, that remained elusive. It was Thursday evening, 1900 hours, and Sarah had just finished an extra training session in the gym. She did this most nights, worked on her weaknesses, refined her strengths, pushed her body past what the day's official training demanded. The hallway leading back to the barracks was quiet, most recruits already in the mess hall or cleaning their gear. That's when she heard the voices drifting from the recreation room. I'm telling you, this whole thing is a disaster waiting to happen. The voice was male, confident, edged with contempt. Women in combat roles. It's not about equality, it's about survival. And we're playing politics with people's lives. Sarah slowed her pace. She knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, knew she should just keep walking. But something kept her feet planted outside that door. Come on, Collins, it's not that bad. Another voice replied, though it sounded uncertain. Some of them are pretty tough. Tough? The laugh that followed was harsh and humorless. My grandmother's tough. Doesn't mean I want her covering my 6 in a firefight. These girls are going to get real Marines killed. Sarah's jaw clenched. She recognized the first voice now, Staff Sergeant Derek Collins. He was an instructor for the Advanced Combat Unit, already graduated from basic, with 2 deployments to Afghanistan under his belt. His reputation preceded him, hardcore, old school, and vocally opposed to women in the Corps. What about that Martinez girl? A third voice chimed in. I heard she took down Davis in combatives. Martinez, Collins scoffed. She's the worst of them because she's got everyone fooled. Yes, she knows some martial arts moves, probably learned them at some strip mall dojo. But that's not combat. Combat is chaos. It's carrying a wounded man twice your size through enemy fire. It's kicking down doors with 80 pounds of gear on your back. It's not some choreographed sparring match. Sarah's hands curled into fists. Her gym bag slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a soft thud. Martinez is 125 pounds soaking wet, Collins continued, warming to his subject. She couldn't drag a casualty 10 feet, let alone across a kill zone. And when the bullets start flying, she'll freeze. They all do. It's biology. Women aren't wired for combat. All this equality nonsense is going to cost lives. That's pretty harsh, Staff Sergeant, the uncertain voice ventured. Harsh? You want to know what's harsh? Getting your buddies killed because the military cares more about looking progressive than maintaining standards. I've seen it before. Standards get lowered, qualifications get adjusted, and suddenly you've got people in positions they can't handle. That Martinez girl, she's a joke. What's she gonna do in battle? Cry at the enemy, throw her tampons at them. Laughter erupted from the room. 5 distinct voices, all male, all joining in the mockery. Something inside Sarah snapped. It wasn't the insults about her size. She'd heard those her whole life. It wasn't even the doubt about her capabilities. She was used to proving herself. It was the casual certainty in Colin's voice, the way he dismissed not just her but every woman who'd ever fought to serve, who'd ever bled and suffered and earned the right to stand alongside their brothers in arms. It was the laughter that followed jokes about women dying in combat, as if their sacrifice would be amusing rather than tragic. Sarah thought of Sergeant First Class Lee Ann Hester, who'd earned a Silver Star in Iraq, of Marine Corporal Pamela Harris, of Army Specialist Monica Brown, of countless women who'd already proven themselves in combat zones while men like Collins clung to their prejudices. She thought of Miguel, and how he'd have challenged anyone who spoke about her this way. Her feet moved before her mind caught up. She pushed open the door to the rec room. 5 Marines sat around a table, all staff sergeants or corporals, all combat instructors, all senior to her in rank and experience. They looked up surprised as Sarah stepped into the doorway. Collins sat at the head of the table, a coffee mug in his hand, his face registering first surprise, then amusement. "Well, well," he drawled. "Speak of the devil, or should I say the little girl playing Marine?" The room went silent. The other 4 Marines exchanged uncomfortable glances, but Collins leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. Sarah's voice came out steady, colder than she felt. "Say that to my face, Staff Sergeant." Collins smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Which part? The part where you're too weak for combat, the part where you're a liability, or the part where you're wasting everyone's time pretending to be something you can't be? The part where you think I can't fight?" The smile widened. "I don't think, Martinez, I know. You've got some cute moves in a controlled environment, but in a real fight, against someone who actually wants to hurt you, you'd fold like a lawn chair." The other Marines looked nervous now. One of them, a corporal named Stevens, stood up. "Staff Sergeant, maybe we should." "Should what?" Collins cut him off. "Be politically correct. Pretend that 125 pounds of girl power is going to hold up in the field." He turned his full attention back to Sarah. "I'm not trying to be mean, Martinez. I'm trying to save lives, yours included. The kindest thing anyone can do is help you realize this isn't where you belong." Sarah took 3 steps into the room. Every nerve in her body was singing, but her mind was clear, clearer than it had been in weeks. She'd spent 6 weeks absorbing punishment, swallowing insults, proving herself every single day to men who would never acknowledge it. She was done waiting for respect. "You think I can't handle a real fight?" Her voice was quiet but carried through the room like a blade. "Then fight me." Collins blinked. For just a moment his confidence wavered, then he laughed. "What?" "You heard me. You and me, Staff Sergeant, prove I'm weak. Prove women don't belong. Put your reputation where your mouth is." The other Marines erupted in protests. "Martinez, you can't challenge a superior officer. This is insane. Someone's going to get in serious trouble." But Collins held up his hand, silencing them. He studied Sarah with new interest, like a cat examining a mouse that had just offered to fight back. Slowly he stood up, all 6 feet and 190 pounds of him. "You're serious? Dead serious? You realize I've been training Marines in hand-to-hand combat for 3 years, that I've fought in actual combat." "I realize you're scared," Sarah replied. "That's why you're trying to talk me out of it." Collins' jaw tightened. Pride and anger warred across his face. The room held its breath. "Fine," he said finally. "You want to learn this lesson the hard way. I'll teach you. But when you're lying on that mat, humiliated in front of everyone, don't say I didn't warn you." "One condition," Sarah said. "All of you." She looked at each of the 5 Marines in turn. "You all think women can't fight. You all had something to say about us. Then you all step up, one after another." The room exploded in disbelief. Stevens actually laughed. "You want to fight all 5 of us? Martinez, that's suicide." "That's confidence," Sarah corrected. something you'd recognize if you had any. Colin's eyes glittered with something between respect and anticipation of her destruction. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Fine, all 5 of us. Tomorrow night, 2100 hours base gym, full protective gear, supervised match. We'll make it official enough to keep us all out of the brig. He extended his hand. Sarah took it, his grip crushing, hers unyielding. Tomorrow night, she agreed. As she walked out of that rec room, her heart pounding, her hands trembling with adrenaline, Sarah realized there was no going back. In less than 24 hours, she would either prove everything she'd been saying, or she would become the example Collins wanted, proof that women didn't belong. But as she lay in her rack that night, staring at the ceiling while the barracks buzzed with rumors of the challenge, Sarah felt no fear. Only certainty. They'd called her weak for the last time. By 600 the next morning, everyone knew. Sarah discovered this when she entered the mess hall for breakfast, and conversation died like someone had flipped a switch. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some curious, some concerned, most filled with morbid anticipation. She could practically hear their thoughts. That's the girl who's going to get destroyed tonight. Martinez. Jessica rushed over, her breakfast tray clattering. Tell me the rumors aren't true. Tell me you didn't challenge 5 combat instructors to a fight. Sarah poured herself coffee, her hands steady despite having slept maybe 2 hours. The rumors are true. Are you insane? Jessica hissed. Collins has been training fighters for years, and you want to take on all 5 of them. Sarah, this isn't some dojo sparring match. They're going to hurt you. They're going to try. Jessica grabbed her arm. Listen to yourself. This is ego talking. Pride, it's not worth it. Sarah met her friend's eyes. It's not about ego. It's about every woman who's ever been told she's too weak, too small, too emotional. It's about proving that skill matters more than size. And yes, maybe it's about pride too, but not the bad kind. The kind that says I refuse to be dismissed without a fight. Before Jessica could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Drill instructor Sergeant Chen stood there, his expression unreadable. Martinez, walk with me. Sarah's stomach tightened, but she followed him outside. The morning sun was already hot, promising a scorcher of a day. Chen led her away from the mess hall, toward the obstacle course where no one could overhear. What you did last night was stupid, he said without preamble. Yes, Sergeant. It was insubordinate, reckless, and could get you kicked out of the Corps before you even graduate. Yes, Sergeant. Chen turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that might have been approval. It was also the bravest damn thing I've seen in 15 years of training recruits. Sarah blinked, speechless. Collins is a skilled fighter, Chen continued, but he's also predictable. He relies on intimidation and overwhelming force. The others are good, but they're not great. You know what your advantages are. Speed, technique. Cardio and strategy, Chen corrected. They're going to underestimate you. Every single one of them thinks this is over before it starts. Use that. Let them tire themselves out. Make them chase you, make them swing big, then make them pay for it. He paused. I can't officially help you, but I'm not officially telling you that the gym's open access room has heavy bags and timing equipment, and I'm not officially suggesting you spend today visualizing each opponent. Understood, Sergeant, thank you. Don't thank me yet, you might still get your ass kicked. But he was almost smiling as he walked away. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. During morning PT, Sarah ran with extra focus, checking her breathing, gauging her stamina. During afternoon drills, she watched the combat instructors when they demonstrated techniques, studied their movements, their tells, their habits. Collins favored his right hand, dropped it slightly when he threw his left. Stevens, the corporal, had good boxing fundamentals but predictable combinations. Martinez, no relation, ironically, was a grappler who telegraphed his takedown attempts. Johnson moved well but had bad cardio. She could see him breathing hard after just 2 minutes of demonstration. And Corporal Davis, the youngest of the five, was talented but hesitant, uncomfortable with the whole situation. At 1800 hours, Sarah forced herself to eat dinner, though her stomach was doing gymnastics. The mess hall buzzed with conversation, betting pools, predictions, arguments about whether the fight should even happen. She caught fragments as she passed. $20 says she doesn't last 30 seconds. Collins is going to kill her. This is messed up. Someone should stop it. I heard she knows kung fu or something. Doesn't matter. Size beats skill when the size difference is that big. Sarah ate mechanically, forcing down protein and carbs her body would need. Across the room, Collins sat with his four companions, laughing about something, completely relaxed. They thought this was already won. Good. At 20:30 hours, Sarah made her way to the gym. She'd expected a small gathering, maybe 50 people, those with nothing better to do on a Friday night. What she found instead stopped her in her tracks. The gym was packed. Easily 200 service members crammed into the space, lined against the walls, sitting on equipment, perched wherever they could find room. Someone had cleared a large mat space in the center, roughly 30 feet square. Proper ring corners had been set up, complete with stools and water bottles. This wasn't an informal scrap. This was an event. Major Patricia Henderson stood near the center mat, her presence officially sanctioning what was about to happen. She was known as fair but tough, a 20-year veteran who'd fought her own battles for respect. When she saw Sarah, she beckoned her over. "Martinez, you understand what you've started here?" "Yes, ma'am." "This fight happens under official sparring rules. Full protective gear, headgear, mouthpieces, cup for the men, chest protector for you, 16-ounce gloves for striking exchanges, 3-minute rounds with 1-minute rests. A fighter can submit verbally or by tapping. I can stop the fight if I see excessive damage. Medical personnel are standing by." She paused. "You can still back out." "Not a chance, ma'am." Henderson's lips quirked. "Didn't think so. Good luck, Martinez. You're going to need it." Sarah moved to her corner where someone had laid out her gear. She began the ritual of preparation, wrapping her hands with careful precision, each loop of cloth a meditation. She stretched, rolled her shoulders, shook out her legs. Around her, the crowd grew louder, more energized. At 20:50, Collins and his four companions entered. The crowd erupted in cheers and hollers. They played to it, Collins especially, shadowboxing, flexing, pointing at Sarah and making throat-cutting gestures. The other four looked less comfortable with the theatrics, but they fell in line. "Listen up," Major Henderson's voice cut through the noise. "This is a sanctioned training exercise. Anyone who interferes will face disciplinary action. Anyone who bets money will face disciplinary action. This isn't entertainment. This is two Marines settling a disagreement the old-fashioned way." But it was entertainment. Sarah could feel the electricity in the air, the barely contained excitement of the crowd. This was the most interesting thing to happen on base in months. "Martinez will face each opponent in succession," Henderson continued. "Starting with Corporal Davis, then Stevens, Martinez, Johnson, and finally Staff Sergeant Collins. Each match continues until submission, knockout, or my intervention. Are the rules clear?" 5 voices from one corner, "Yes, ma'am." 1 voice from Sarah's corner, "Yes, ma'am." "Fighters, take your positions." Sarah stood, pulled on her headgear, inserted her mouthpiece. Across the mat, Corporal Davis did the same. He looked young suddenly, maybe 22, 23. Their eyes met, and Sarah saw something unexpected there: apology. He didn't want to be here, but he was loyal to his team, and now he had no choice. Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it, the moment 6 weeks of hell had been building toward. The moment that would define not just her career, but the careers of every woman who came after her. She thought of Miguel, of Master Chen, of every person who'd believed in her when belief was hard. She thought of her hands wrapped in tape and cloth, weapons honed by 8 years of training. She thought of Colin's face when she proved him wrong. The crowd fell silent, even the air seemed to hold its breath. Major Henderson raised her hand. "Fight." The hand dropped, and Sarah Martinez went to war. Corporal Davis circled left, his stance cautious, hands high. At 62 and 195 pounds, he had every physical advantage. But Sarah could see the hesitation in his movements, the guilt in his eyes. He didn't want to hurt her. That was his first mistake. Sarah bounced lightly on her toes, her smaller frame allowing for quicker movement. Davis threw a tentative jab, testing range, testing her reactions. She slipped it easily, the punch whistling past her ear. He threw another. She slipped again, this time countering with a quick jab to his ribs that made him grunt. The crowd murmured. Davis's eyes widened slightly. He'd expected a victim. He was facing a fighter. He came forward more aggressively, throwing a combination jab, cross, hook. Sarah parried the first two, ducked under the hook, and exploded forward with a liver shot that folded Davis slightly at the waist. Before he could recover, she pivoted and snapped a roundhouse kick to his temple, not full power but enough. Davis's knees buckled. He caught himself, but his eyes were unfocused. Major Henderson stepped in immediately. "Fight stopped. Davis, you're done. 12 seconds. The gym erupted in shocked noise. 12 seconds. Sarah had just dropped a combat instructor in 12 seconds. Davis touched gloves with her as he left the mat, respect now replacing the apology in his eyes. "Good luck," he whispered through his mouthpiece. "Stevens, you're up." Corporal Stevens entered the ring with none of Davis's hesitation. He was angry now, angry that his teammate had gone down so quickly, angry that he'd underestimated her. He came at Sarah like a freight train. Stevens was a boxer and a good one. His jab was sharp, his footwork solid. He pressed forward, throwing punches in bunches, trying to overwhelm her with volume. Sarah gave ground, circling, blocking, slipping, waiting for her opening. 30 seconds in, Stevens was breathing hard. He'd thrown maybe 40 punches and Sarah had made him miss most of them. Movement was exhausting, much more exhausting than standing still and throwing. Her cardio training was paying off. Stevens loaded up on a big right hand, telegraphing it from a mile away. Sarah saw it coming, ducked under, and shot for a takedown. Her wrestling wasn't perfect, but she didn't need perfect. She just needed to get him down. They hit the mat, and suddenly Sarah was in her element. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu didn't care about size, it cared about leverage and technique. She secured side control, then transitioned smoothly to mount. Stevens tried to buck her off, but she rode him like a rodeo, maintaining her base. When he made the mistake of reaching up to push her away, she caught his arm, swiveled her hips, and locked in an armbar. Stevens held out for maybe 3 seconds before the pressure on his elbow became unbearable. He tapped, twice, hard against her leg. Submission. Stevens is out. Time, 1 minute 42 seconds. 2 down. Sarah stood, her breathing controlled, her mind clear. The crowd wasn't just murmuring now, they were roaring. This wasn't going how anyone had expected. But she could feel the exhaustion starting to creep in. 2 fights, even short ones, took their toll, and she had 3 more to go. Martinez, not Davis, the opponent, Staff Sergeant Martinez, the grappler. Let's see how you do against someone who actually knows ground fighting. He was right to be confident. Martinez was a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 50 pounds heavier and experienced. If this fight went to the ground, she'd be in trouble. So Sarah decided it wouldn't go to the ground. Martinez came forward, hands low, looking for a clinch or a takedown. Sarah kept her distance, circling, throwing kicks to keep him at range. A low kick to his lead leg. Another. A third that made him grimace. Stand still and fight. Martinez growled, shooting for a takedown. Sarah sprawled perfectly, stuffing the attempt, then disengaged before he could grab her legs. More circling, more kicks. She was fighting like a Muay Thai specialist now, using her range, her speed, her ability to strike and move. Martinez grew frustrated. He shot again, this time more desperately. Sarah saw it coming, timed her counter perfectly, and brought a knee up that caught him square in the face as he shot in. The headgear absorbed most of the impact, but Martinez's head snapped back, and he stumbled. Sarah didn't give him time to recover. She pounced with a combination, jab, cross, hook, all landing clean. Martinez tried to cover up, but his defense was sloppy. Another clean cross caught him on the chin, and his legs went rubbery. Major Henderson stepped in. Fight stopped. Martinez is out. Time 2 minutes 19 seconds. 3 down. Sarah's lungs were burning now, her arms heavy. Sweat poured down her face inside the headgear. She took deep breaths during the 1-minute rest, forcing oxygen into her muscles. Johnson entered next, big, powerful, but Sarah had noticed his cardio problems during training. She had a plan. For the first minute, Sarah did nothing but move. Circle left, circle right, make Johnson chase her. He threw power punches that cut through the air where she'd been a moment before. 45 seconds in, she could see him breathing hard through his mouthpiece. "Stand still," he shouted, frustrated. Sarah smiled behind her own mouthpiece and kept moving. At the 90-second mark, Johnson's hands started dropping. His punches came slower. At 2 minutes, he was sucking wind, his face red with exertion. That's when Sarah went to work. She stepped in and unleashed a combination she'd practiced 10,000 times. Jab to the face, cross to the body, hook to the head, low kick, spinning back fist. Johnson tried to cover up, but he was too tired to maintain his guard. Sarah worked him like a heavy bag, methodical, technical, relentless. At 2 minutes 45 seconds, Johnson's corner threw in the towel. Fight stopped. Johnson is out. 4 down, 1 to go. Sarah bent over, hands on her knees, gasping for air. Her body was screaming at her. 4 fights in under 10 minutes was more than she'd ever done. Her arms felt like lead. Her legs trembled. But she straightened up and looked across the mat at Staff Sergeant Collins. He stood in his corner, no longer smiling, no longer confident. She just dismantled 4 trained fighters, and now he was alone. The crowd had gone from entertained to electrified. They were standing now, pressed against the boundaries, shouting encouragement, most of it, Sarah realized with shock for her. Martinez, Martinez, Martinez. Collins stepped onto the mat, and Sarah could see the calculation in his eyes. She was tired. He was fresh. He still had every physical advantage, but doubt had crept in, and doubt was a fighter's worst enemy. "Good run, Martinez," he said as they touched gloves, "but this is where it ends." "We'll see," Sarah replied. Major Henderson looked at both fighters. "This is the last match. Are you both ready?" "Yes, ma'am," Collins barked. Sarah just nodded, saving her breath. "Fight." Collins came out fast and aggressive, trying to end it quickly before her adrenaline wore off. He was skilled, much more skilled than the others, and his combinations were crisp and powerful. Sarah defended, absorbed a few shots on her guard, and looked for patterns. There, when he threw his left hook, his right hand dropped, just slightly, just for a moment. She waited, 30 seconds, 45. At 1 minute, Collins threw the combination, jab, cross, left hook. His right hand dropped. Sarah exploded with a right hand that split his guard and snapped his head back. Collins stumbled, shocked. She pressed forward, jab, cross, low kick, high kick. Collins backed up, his confidence shattered. At 90 seconds, Sarah faked a high kick and went low instead, sweeping Collins's front leg. He went down hard, and she was on him immediately, transitioning through positions with desperate speed. Collins was strong, experienced, and skilled on the ground, but he was also panicking. Sarah could feel it in the way he moved, too fast, too frantic, making mistakes. She trapped an arm, secured the position, and slid her forearm across his throat. Rear-naked choke. She locked it in tight, squeezed, felt Collins's hand scrabble at her arm. His body went slack. Major Henderson pulled her off immediately. "Stop, he's out, fight over." The gym exploded. Sarah rolled onto her back, chest heaving, staring up at the fluorescent lights. Her body was done, she couldn't have gone another second, but she'd done it. 5 Marines, 5 knockouts. Around her, the crowd was going absolutely insane. People were chanting her name, jumping, embracing each other like they'd just witnessed something historic. Because they had. Sarah Martinez, 53 and 125 pounds, had just changed the conversation forever. Sarah woke up in the base medical facility at 300, disoriented and aching everywhere. The last thing she clearly remembered was Major Henderson checking her pupils while someone pressed an ice pack to her swollen knuckles. Everything after the 5th fight was a blur of faces, voices, and hands patting her shoulders. "Easy, easy." A Navy corpsman appeared at her bedside. "You're fine, just exhaustion and dehydration. We kept you for observation, but you can return to barracks in a few hours." "What time is it?" Sarah's voice came out as a rasp. 0300. "You've been out about 5 hours. The corpsman handed her a water bottle. "You're trending on Twitter, by the way, #3 in the United States." Sarah's hand froze with the bottle halfway to her lips. "What?" The corpsman pulled out his phone, navigating to Twitter. There it was, a shaky video someone had taken from the crowd, showing Sarah's fight with Collins. The caption read, "Female Marine recruit destroys 5 male Marines. This is what equality looks like. Women in combat USMC." Views 8.7 million, and climbing. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. "Oh yes," the corpsman corrected. "Someone leaked it around midnight. By 0100, every major news outlet was calling the base. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even the BBC. Your international news, Martinez." Sarah's stomach dropped. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be a private matter, settled between Marines, contained within the Corps. Now it was everywhere, and she had no control over the narrative. By 600, when Sarah was cleared to return to barracks, the full scope of what was happening became clear. Her phone, returned to her with her personal effects, showed 347 missed calls, 1,842 text messages, and email notifications that had stopped counting at 999 plus. The walk back to barracks felt surreal. Marines she'd never met stopped to watch her pass, some offering nods of respect, others glaring with open hostility. She heard whispered conversations that cut off when she got too close. Jessica met her at the barracks entrance, pulling her into a fierce hug. "You crazy, beautiful badass. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Made a huge mistake." "Changed history," Jessica corrected, dragging her inside. "Look at this." The common room TV was tuned to CNN. A panel of military analysts debated the video, with the chyron reading, "Female Marines, viral fight reignites women in combat debate." Demonstrates that physical standards aren't as gender-dependent as critics claim, one analyst argued. "This was a controlled environment," another countered. "Combat conditions are entirely different. One viral video doesn't change the fundamental." "Martinez," drill instructor Morrison's voice boomed from the doorway. "My office, now." The walk to Morrison's office felt like a death march. Sarah had been up for maybe 3 hours after 5 hours of sleep. Her body was wrecked, and now she was probably going to face disciplinary action for the fight, the video, the media circus, all of it. Morrison sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood Major Henderson and, to Sarah's shock, Colonel Richard Vance, the base commander. "Sit down, Martinez," Colonel Vance said. Sarah sat back straight despite her exhaustion. "Do you understand what you've created?" Vance asked, his tone neutral. "I'm beginning to, sir. The commandant called me at 200. The Secretary of Defense's office called at 2:30. I've had 17 different media outlets request interviews, 3 senators' offices demanding statements, and the Marine Corps Public Affairs Office trying to figure out how to spin this." He leaned forward. "So I'll ask you directly, what were you thinking?" Sarah met his eyes. "I was thinking that I was tired of being told I don't belong, sir. That women don't belong. I was thinking that words weren't going to change their minds, but action might. And challenging 5 superior ranks to unauthorized combat was your solution." "It was supervised, sir," Major Henderson interjected. "I authorized it as a training exercise." Vance shot her a look that could have melted steel. A training exercise that's now international news and has reignited one of the most divisive debates in military policy. The Marine Corps doesn't need this attention right now. "With respect, sir," Sarah said quietly, "maybe it does." The room went silent. Morrison's eyes widened. Even Henderson looked shocked at her audacity. Vance studied her for a long moment. "Explain." "The integration of women into combat roles is still new, still controversial. There are men like Staff Sergeant Collins in every unit, in every base, undermining female Marines every day. They create environments where women have to work twice as hard for half the respect. Last night," Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Last night I proved that skill and determination can overcome size and strength. Not in theory, not in a study. In reality, in front of 200 witnesses." "You also assaulted 5 Marines," Morrison interjected. "Who volunteered," Henderson countered. "Who issued the initial challenge. Martinez was defending herself and every female Marine they've ever disparaged." Vance held up his hand, silencing the debate. "Here's what's going to happen. The 5 Marines you fought are being reassigned. Collins to a desk job pending a review of his conduct toward female service members. The investigation revealed multiple complaints that were never properly addressed." Sarah felt a flash of satisfaction, then guilt. She hadn't wanted to ruin careers, just prove a point. "As for you," Vance continued, "you're being placed on special assignment. The commandant wants you to complete your training, graduate, and then participate in a joint task force studying combat effectiveness metrics. You'll be a case study, Martinez, whether you want to be or not." "And if I just want to be a regular Marine, sir?" "That ship sailed when you knocked out 5 men on camera." Vance's expression softened slightly. "For better or worse, you're a symbol now. How you handle that will determine whether you're remembered as a troublemaker or a trailblazer." The meeting ended with Sarah more confused than when it started. She'd wanted to prove herself. She'd wanted respect. She hadn't wanted to become a poster child for social change. Over the next 72 hours, the story exploded beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. The video was analyzed frame by fight commentators. Think pieces appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and military journals. The hashtag #MarineMartinez trended for 3 straight days. Support poured in from unexpected places. Retired General Sandra Wright, a pioneer for women in the military, wrote an op-ed praising Sarah's courage. Female combat veterans shared their own stories of discrimination and vindication. Athletic organizations highlighted the video as proof that women's combat sports deserved more investment and respect. But the backlash was equally fierce. Conservative commentators called the fight a publicity stunt. Online trolls flooded Sarah's social media with vile messages. Some claimed the video was fake, that the Marines had thrown the fights. Others argued that one woman's success didn't represent all women's capabilities. The 5 Marines faced their own reckonings. Collins's reassignment became public, and with it came revelations about his history of misconduct toward female Marines, complaints that had been filed and ignored. Stevens and Martinez issued public apologies, acknowledging their biases and committing to change. Davis and Johnson stayed quiet, processing their defeat privately. On day 4, Sarah received a handwritten letter, delivered through official channels. Martinez: You were right. I was scared. Scared that if women could do what I do, it meant I wasn't special. Scared that the core I loved was changing into something I didn't recognize. Scared that admitting women belong meant admitting I'd been wrong for years. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just saying I'm starting to understand. You didn't just beat us in that gym. You beat the part of me that needed you to fail. Good luck, Marine. Collins. Sarah folded the letter carefully, tears pricking her eyes for the first time since the fight. This was what she'd been fighting for, not victory but understanding, not dominance but equality, not revenge but change. That evening, as Sarah sat in the barracks' common room surrounded by fellow recruits, male and female, watching her fight replay on ESPN, someone asked the question everyone was thinking. Was it worth it? Sarah looked at Jessica, at the female recruits who sat a little straighter now, at the male recruits who looked at them differently, with respect instead of dismissal. She thought of Collins's letter, of the conversation that was happening across the country, of every woman who would have an easier path because Sarah had taken the harder one. Ask me in 10 years, she said, when the next generation of female Marines doesn't have to fight for respect, they just get it automatically, then I'll know if it was worth it. But deep down, watching the pride on her fellow Marines' faces, Sarah already knew the answer. It was worth everything. 3 weeks after the fight, a reporter from The Atlantic finally tracked Sarah down during her off-duty hours. She declined every interview request, ignored every media inquiry, but Marcus Chen, the journalist, wasn't asking for an interview. He was asking to understand. Why did you enlist? He asked, sitting across from her at a coffee shop just outside base. You had scholarships, you had options. Why the Marines? Sarah stared into her coffee, seeing her reflection ripple in the dark liquid. You want the real story, not the heroic soundbite. Always. Then I need to tell you about my brother. Miguel Martinez had been born 3 years before Sarah, in a neighborhood of East Los Angeles where helicopter searchlights were more common than stars. Their mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving tables during the day. Their father had disappeared when Sarah was 4, leaving behind nothing but unpaid bills and broken promises. Miguel tried to be the man of the house. At 15, he was working part-time at a bodega, bringing home money, walking Sarah to school every morning. He was funny, protective, and desperate to prove he was strong enough to keep them safe. The gang came to him when he was 16, Sarah told Marcus, her voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. Los Reyes. They told him he could protect our family, make real money, be somebody. Miguel wasn't stupid. He knew what they really were. But when you're 16 and scared and the only power you see comes from violence, you make bad choices. Sarah joined Master Chen's Victory Dojo at 13, not because she wanted to learn to fight, but because it was free and kept her off the streets after school. Miguel had found it first, trained for 6 months, then quit when Los Reyes recruited him. Master Chen tried to stop him, Sarah continued. Told him that real strength wasn't about intimidation or guns. Miguel laughed at him, said the dojo couldn't protect us from the real world. For 2 years, Miguel ran with Los Reyes. He never brought the violence home, never involved Sarah, but she could see it changing him, hardening him, hollowing him out. He stopped laughing, stopped talking about the future, started looking over his shoulder everywhere he went. Sarah threw herself into martial arts during those years. While Miguel was on corners at midnight, she was at the dojo until closing, hitting bags until her knuckles bled, drilling techniques until they were muscle memory. Master Chen saw something in her, a discipline, a hunger that went beyond self-defense. You're not training to fight, he told her once. "You're training to become someone who doesn't need to fight." "What's the difference?" she'd asked. "Confidence. Real confidence doesn't need to prove itself." On March 14th, 2 weeks before Sarah's 17th birthday, Miguel was shot in a drive-by. A rival gang. Retaliation for something Sarah never fully understood. He died on the sidewalk 2 blocks from their apartment, holding the hand of a Los Reyes member who would himself be dead within a year. Sarah found out when 2 police officers knocked on their door at 2 a.m. The funeral was packed, Sarah told Marcus, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup like an anchor. Los Reyes members came, all wearing their colors, acting like Miguel was a hero. He wasn't a hero. He was a scared kid who made bad choices and paid the ultimate price. At the funeral, Sarah met Gunnery Sergeant Antonio Rodriguez, a Marine recruiter who'd grown up in the same neighborhood. He'd known Miguel from the community center, had tried to steer him toward the military instead of the gangs. "Your brother wanted to be a warrior," Rodriguez told Sarah after the service. "He just looked for it in the wrong place. Los Reyes made him feel strong, but it was false strength, borrowed from fear and violence. The Corps builds real warriors, the kind who protect, not destroy." Those words planted a seed. "I kept training," Sarah told Marcus. "Harder than ever, got my blue belt, then purple, then brown. Won regional tournaments, got scholarship offers from 3 colleges. My mom begged me to take one, said Miguel died so I could have a better life." "But you enlisted instead." "I enlisted because I finally understood what Miguel had been searching for: purpose, brotherhood, a way to channel his strength toward something meaningful. He never found it. I needed to for both of us." Marcus scribbled notes, then looked up. "The men you fought in that gym, did they remind you of the gang members, the ones who dismissed Miguel's potential?" Sarah considered this. "No, they reminded me of Miguel, men who tie their identity to a narrow definition of strength, who feel threatened when that definition expands. Miguel thought strength meant being feared. Collins thought strength meant being male. Both were wrong." The article Marcus eventually published, "The Fight That Changed Everything," inside the mind of Marine Martinez, went deeper than the viral video. It contextualized Sarah's story within the larger narrative of women fighting for equality in the military. He documented how women had been excluded from direct combat roles until 2013, when the ban was lifted. How the first female Marines to graduate infantry training faced harassment and skepticism. How every integration milestone, women in aviation, women in submarines, women in special operations, had been met with predictions of disaster that never materialized. He interviewed the Marines Sarah had fought. Stevens spoke candidly. "I believed women would lower standards because I'd been told that my entire career. I never questioned it. Sarah didn't just beat me physically, she beat my assumption that I was right." Martinez, the grappler, admitted, "I wanted her to fail. Not because I hate women, but because if she succeeded, it meant I'd been complicit in a system that held talented people back. Easier to maintain the status quo than confront my own biases." Even Collins, in his only interview since the incident, showed remarkable self-awareness. "I'd built my identity around being a warrior in an exclusive club. The idea that women could be warriors too felt like an attack on my identity. It wasn't. It was an invitation to expand my understanding of what warriors look like." The article also featured voices from the broader military community. Female veterans who'd served in Iraq and Afghanistan before combat roles were officially opened, who'd faced enemy fire while technically being in support roles. Women like Sergeant Lee Ann Hester, who'd earned a Silver Star for valor in Iraq in 2005. Like Major Mary Jennings Heger, who'd been shot down in Afghanistan and fought off Taliban fighters while rescuing wounded soldiers. Sarah's fight hadn't happened in a vacuum. It was part of a continuum, one more step in a long march toward equality. The day the article published, Sarah received a call from an unexpected source. General Sandra Wright, the first female three-star general in the Marine Corps, now retired. "I read your story," Wright said without preamble. "About your brother, I want you to know something. In 1982, when I tried to become a Marine, they told me women weren't cut out for military service. Too emotional, too weak, not team players. Sound familiar?" "Yes, ma'am." "I spent 30 years proving them wrong. Not once, but every single day. You know what I learned? Progress isn't a straight line. It's not one fight, one viral video, one breakthrough. It's thousands of small victories, hundreds of women refusing to quit when quitting would be easier." "It feels like a lot of pressure, ma'am." "It is, but here's what they don't tell you. You don't carry it alone. Every woman who came before you helped build the foundation. Every woman who comes after will add to what you've started. Your brother wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. Sarah, you've given that to him posthumously. His story, combined with yours, will inspire people he never met." After they hung up, Sarah sat in silence, processing everything. She thought about Miguel, not as he'd died but as he'd been before the gangs, laughing, dreaming, full of potential that never got realized. She thought about Master Chen, who taught her that strength without purpose was just violence with better marketing. She thought about the 200 Marines who'd watched her fight, and the millions who'd watched the video, and the conversations happening in barracks and living rooms and policy meetings across the country. Her story wasn't just about one fight in one gym. It was about every person who'd been told they didn't belong, who'd been measured by their exterior rather than their capability, who'd fought not for victory but for the right to simply compete. Miguel had died searching for strength in all the wrong places. Sarah had found it, and in doing so had helped redefine what strength meant for everyone watching. That was the weight she carried now. And she would carry it with honor. 5 years later, Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez stood at the front of a training classroom at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, California, watching a new class of recruits file in. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny warriors themselves. 23 recruits, 3 women, 20 men, all nervous, all uncertain, all carrying the weight of expectations they didn't yet understand. Sarah recognized that look. She'd worn it once. "Take your seats," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd earned every word. Her uniform displayed ribbons that told stories. Combat Action ribbon from her deployment to Syria. Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Valor. Good Conduct Medal. The kind of decorations that couldn't be faked or given, only earned through fire. The recruits sat. One of the male recruits, a massive kid who looked like he'd been born in a weight room, whispered something to his buddy. Both smirked, their eyes flickering toward the 3 female recruits in the back row. Sarah caught it. She caught everything. "Before we begin," she said, packing slowly across the front of the room, "I want to address something. Some of you are wondering if standards have dropped, if the Corps has gone soft, if diversity initiatives mean we're prioritizing politics over capability." The room went silent. The smirking recruit suddenly found his boots very interesting. "Let me be clear about something," Sarah continued. "Standards haven't dropped. Your understanding of what makes a warrior has just been too narrow." She paused at the screen behind her and pulled up a video. Not the viral fight, she rarely used that anymore. Instead, it showed combat footage from Syria, Marines under fire, working as a coordinated unit, covering each other, completing their mission. "That's Corporal Jessica Mendez," Sarah said, pointing to a figure on screen. "She was in my platoon at Quantico. That footage shows her carrying a wounded Marine, a man who outweighed her by 80 pounds, 200 meters under enemy fire to a medevac point. She earned a Bronze Star with Valor for that action." Sarah changed the slide to show more combat photos. Men and women, working together, bleeding together, succeeding together. War doesn't care about your gender. Combat doesn't care about politics. The enemy doesn't give you easier treatment because you're a woman or harder treatment because you're a man. The only thing that matters is competence, courage, and commitment to the Marines on your left and right. She turned to face them fully. In this course, you will be evaluated on your performance, not your potential, not your appearance, your actual capability. Some of you will excel, some will struggle, some might fail, and none of that will correlate with what's between your legs. One of the female recruits, a small woman who couldn't have been more than 54, raised her hand tentatively. "Staff Sergeant, is it true you're the Martinez from the video?" Sarah had been expecting this. It came up in every class. "Yes, that was me, 5 years ago at Quantico." "Did you really knock out 5 Marines?" a male recruit asked, his tone hovering between skepticism and awe. "I did, in a supervised training exercise that got way more attention than anyone expected." Sarah leaned against her desk. "You want to know what I learned from that experience? It wasn't about proving I could fight. It was about proving that your assumptions about people, based on size, gender, or anything else, are often wrong, and in combat, wrong assumptions get people killed." She pulled up another image, a photo of her class at Quantico graduation day. "This was my platoon. We started with 47 recruits, 31 graduated. The attrition rate was the same for men and women, about 35%. Know what that tells me? That the standards work. They filter out people who can't cut it, regardless of gender." The massive recruit raised his hand. "Staff Sergeant, no disrespect, but you're kind of famous for that fight. How do we know you're not just an exception?" Sarah smiled. It was a fair question. "What's your name, recruit?" "Thompson, Staff Sergeant." "Well, Thompson, I'm glad you asked, because I am exceptional, but not in the way you think." She pulled up deployment statistics. "Since women have been allowed in all combat roles, they've maintained the same performance standards as men, same qualification rates, same success rates, same attrition rates in specialized training. The data doesn't lie." She changed slides again, showing a photo that made her chest tighten even after all these years. Master Chen at the Victory Dojo, arm around a teenage Sarah, both smiling. "I had an instructor once who told me that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself, understanding your capabilities and limitations, working to improve both." She looked at each recruit. "That's what this training is about. Not about proving you're better than someone else, about becoming the best version of yourself." After the class, Sarah retreated to her office, a small space that she'd made her own with photos and mementos. On her desk sat a framed picture of Miguel, forever 19, frozen in a moment before everything went wrong. "Hey, hermano," she said softly, touching the frame. "Got another group of kids today. Some of them remind me of you, trying to figure out who they are, where they belong." Her computer chimed with an incoming email. The sender made her pause. Derek Collins. They'd maintained correspondence over the years, awkward at first, then gradually more honest. Collins had taken his reassignment as an opportunity for genuine self-reflection. He'd completed sensitivity training, attended workshops on unconscious bias, and slowly rebuilt his career through humility rather than bravado. "Sarah, wanted to let you know I'm retiring next month. 20 years in the Corps. Never thought I'd make it after what happened. But I did, and I'm proud of how I finished, not how I started. I'm teaching now. Self-defense classes for women. Funny how life works. The thing I fought against became the thing I advocate for. My daughter enlisted last year. Infantry. She's everything I said women couldn't be: strong, capable, fierce. And when other Marines doubt her, I'm the first one to set them straight. Thank you for not giving up on me when giving up would have been easier. Thank you for showing me that being wrong isn't weakness, refusing to change is. Semper Fi. Derek. Sarah read the email twice, feeling the full weight of transformation. This was the legacy that mattered more than any viral video, actual change in actual hearts. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, now stationed in Okinawa. Just ran a 5K with my platoon. Beat every single one of the men. They bought me dinner. Progress, right? Sarah smiled and typed back, "That's what excellence looks like. Proud of you, sister." As the sun set over Camp Pendleton, painting the California sky in shades of orange and purple, Sarah walked to the obstacle course, the same type of course where she'd struggled 5 years ago. A female recruit was on the rope climb, straining, halfway up, determination etched on her face. At the bottom, her male squad mates were cheering, not mocking, encouraging. "Come on, Rodriguez, you got this. 10 more feet, push." Rodriguez made it to the top, rang the bell, and slid down to high fives and congratulations from her team. Sarah watched from a distance, not interfering, just observing. This was it. This was what she'd fought for in that gym 5 years ago. Not recognition, not fame. Just this. A world where female Marines were evaluated on merit, where male Marines saw them as equals, where the only thing that mattered was whether you could do the job. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah opened her footlocker and pulled out a worn piece of paper. The letter Miguel had written her the week before he died, never mailed, found by police in his belongings. "Sarita, I messed up. I know you know. I know Mom knows. I thought joining Lowe's Rays would make me strong, would make me matter, but I just feel empty, scared, lost. You found something real at that dojo, something I couldn't see. I wish I'd stuck with it. Wish I'd listened to Master Chen. Wish I'd been more like you, brave enough to build strength instead of borrow it. If I don't make it, and I know the odds, promise me you'll keep fighting, not just with fists. Fight to be something I couldn't. Fight to matter in ways I never did. Te amo, hermana. Miguel." Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the footlocker. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I'm still keeping it." Through her window, she could see the obstacle course, the training grounds, the barracks where tomorrow's Marines slept. Somewhere in those buildings were young women who would face the same doubts, the same challenges, the same fight for respect that she had faced. But they wouldn't face it alone. They wouldn't face it from zero. They would stand on the foundation Sarah and countless others had built, a foundation of competence, courage, and undeniable capability. 5 years ago, Sarah Martinez had knocked out 5 Marines in a gym at Quantico. Today, Staff Sergeant Martinez was building an entire generation that wouldn't need to. And that, more than any fight, was her greatest victory. The end.